Remember to follow the State Board of Education on Twitter at edstateboard_NC. You can also view all of our meeting materials and follow the meeting online. I remind the audience and those listening that this body meets monthly with its official meeting scheduled for the first Thursday of the month. Committee meetings were held yesterday prior to the official meeting date, as was the case when the board met to discuss these committee agenda items. Our December agenda was approved yesterday, so we'll proceed under that approved agenda. Board members are reminded it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of the board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. And if during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. This time I ask my colleague, Dr. Olivia Oxendine, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. Now, before we proceed to our special recognitions, I'd like to take a moment and thank all of those who participated in, and particularly those who led the effort in preparing for the successful AIM conference that is just now concluding. In particular, I'd like to thank Ms. Julie Pittman and Ms. Jill Darrow for their leadership efforts in pulling this conference together, and also like to thank the sponsors of the event that helped make this a financial success. But in particular, I'm just really delighted at the leadership shown at this conference, both by our superintendent, by the Department of Public Instruction, and by district leaders across North Carolina. You make us really proud to be on the same team with you. So thanks for that successful conference. We'll now turn to our special recognitions, a time on our agenda when we recognize significant awards, proclamations, resolutions, and those who make a difference in the lives of public school students every day. And I'll start with Dr. Stegall, Mary Hemphill-Joseph, Christy Day, and Lori Carlin to lead the first round of special recognitions. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I'm Lori Carlin, and I'm the Section Chief for Social Studies and Arts Education. We are pleased to recognize our state schools of character. During these challenging times, we need kindness, empathy, and good character more than ever. These schools have been embracing their entire populations with these things in mind. Based on the Student Citizen Act of 2001, NCDPI has been working with schools across the state to promote the ideals of character education. Our first school is Southeast Guilford High School. You guys want to stand up for it? Southeast Guilford High School is a traditional school located in Greensboro, North Carolina, serving roughly 1,300 students in grades 9 through 12. They have a nationally ranked NJ-ROTC program, offer 14 unique CTE career pathways, teach 14 different advanced placement courses, and provide students the opportunity to earn college credit while taking courses at the local community college. The goal at Southeast is for students to reach their highest potential by providing a school environment that is rich in rigor, relevance, and relationships. They value character, service, family, and community. Their diverse community, student body, and staff work collectively to improve educational outcomes for all students. Their commitment to continuous improvement of all students is centered around the Falcon Fundamentals, a set of core instructional practices that support students academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. The development of the Falcon Fundamentals has led to the emergence of our motto, every teacher, every student, every day. Character is universal and includes a set of common core values that allows us as individuals to rise above differences. Everyone can be successful with character education. Character education is the heart of what they do as Southeast Falcons. It is what nurtures the sense of community within their school. Character education makes their learning at Southeast more meaningful, impacts their school culture, and transcends the building as they graduate future leaders with a strong moral compass. So congratulations again. Okay. So if you guys want to come on up, we'll do a photo with you all.
My colleagues could join us.
Shows in your eyes. We'll take our place. I feel like I'm on a cliff. Chair Duncan. Rest your left side.
I'm back here.
Hard.
I know, I'm right with you. Well, he's from Guilford, he ought to be front and center.
Yes.
They got you.
Shamed you into it.
Very good.
There we go.
I like our Southeast colors.
I can see it's very awesome. And 1, 2, and 3, and one more. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks for leaving school.
I'm not doing Our second school of character is Union Academy. We'll have them stand up. Union Academy is a K-12 charter school in Monroe, North Carolina, and was established in 2000 on the pillars of challenge, character, and community. Their character education journey was created with the following foundation in mind: to educate the whole child by incorporating community service and their 8 character traits: compassion, adaptability, respect, responsibility, optimism, trustworthiness, perseverance, and initiative into a challenging curriculum. Union Academy has grown and changed exponentially through the years in number, size, and demographics, yet the character education culture that develops students into good citizens, lifelong learners, and community volunteers has remained fully intact. Union Academy's character program includes a character coach, parents, staff, students, and community members to help maintain a consistent and enriching program where they are perpetually learning and growing. Union Academy also hosts an annual Character Day with recognized authors and motivational speakers, character assemblies, advisory lessons, character goal writing for high school students, and book studies. The impact of character education is evident in the yearly surveys the school conducts, where character is always listed by staff, students, and parents as a leading reason they chose to attend Union Academy. We are grateful to the State Board for supporting these efforts to ensure our North Carolina students are both smart and kind.
I know. I'm a girl.
3, and one more, and 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Catherine, good to see you. Thanks so much. Congratulations.
Good morning, Superintendent Truitt, Chairman Davis, Vice Chairman Duncan, State Board of Education members, and honored guests. My name is Howard Ginsberg. I'm a STEM consultant, and on behalf of Joseph Reaper, our State Coordinator for the Presidential Awards, it gives me great pleasure to talk about this recognition program and to present the 2021 North Carolina finalists for the Presidential Awards in Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, and the awardees from 2017, 18, and 19. The Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, PAMES, is the highest recognition that teachers of science, technology, engineering, and math, and computer science may receive for outstanding teaching in the United States. Enacted by Congress in 1983, this program authorizes the President to bestow up to 108 awards each year. The National Science Foundation administers presidential awards on behalf of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Up to 2 awardees will be announced from the state finalists. To earn this recognition, the finalists completed an application that consisted of a written narrative concerning their teaching practices, letters of recommendation, supplemental material to demonstrate their success, and a 30-minute unedited video of their classroom. A selection committee then rated each application based on the teacher's mastery of the content, anticipation and planning for misconceptions, purposeful use of instructional methods, support of the needs of all students, effective use of assessments to improve student learning, reflective practices to improve teaching and learning, strategies that are supportive and inclusive of students from diverse backgrounds, and leadership outside of the classroom. For 2021, the Presidential Awards focused on teachers from the STEM fields in grades 7 to 12. First, we're here today to honor the 6 finalists from North Carolina. These teachers are recognized for their skills as educators, with focus on growing students and developing a passion for the STEM fields. In addition to honoring individual achievement, the goal of this awards program is to exemplify the highest standards of teaching. Our finalists serve as models for their colleagues, inspiration for their communities, and leaders in the improvement of STEM education. These teachers are leaders not only in the classroom, but in their school, district, our state, and across the nation. If the 2021 North Carolina finalists would please stand and come forward as your name is announced. The 2021 North Carolina finalists for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching are, in the area of 7 to 12 mathematics from the Northwest District, Chastity Bolsh of Newton Conover Middle School, Newton Conover City Schools. From the Western District, Margaret McDade, East Henderson High School, Henderson County Public Schools. From the Southwest District, James O'Neill, Piedmont IB Middle School, Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. And in the area of 712 Science, from the Sandhills District, Cheryl Kavanaugh, Union High School, Sampson County Schools. From the Northwest District, Andrea Gladden, East Burke Middle School, Burke County Public Schools. And from the North Central District, Danielle McCaslin, Mills Park Middle School, Wake County Public School System. I think we'll do the photo once I introduce your finalists as well, just to save a lot up and down. The national awardees, if you guys will just hang tight. The national awardees of the presidential awards are announced on the timing at the behest of the White House. The difficulty of creating such a schedule, especially with the current pandemic, means the announcement of the national awardees are often delayed. Today marks the first opportunity to bring North Carolina's most recently announced awardees before you in recognition. Today, we do have North Carolina's 2017, 2018, and 2019 awardees. The 2020 and 2021 awardees have yet to be announced. As presidential awardees, they have received a citation signed by the President of the United States, a trip to Washington, D.C. to attend a series of recognition events and professional development opportunities. The 2019 awardees have yet to make their trip. They've received a $10,000 award from the National Science Foundation. So if the national awardees, would please come forward when your name is announced. Our 2017 national awardees for presidential awards in grades 7-12 mathematics from the Piedmont Triad District, Wendy Bartlett, Reagan High School, Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools. In grades 7-12 in science from the Western District, Laura Lawrence, Asheville School, Asheville, North Carolina. Our 2018 national awardees for the presidential awards in grades K-6 mathematics from the Southeast District, Elizabeth Gillikin, Smyrna Elementary School, Carteret County Schools. In grades K-6 in science from the Northwest District, Catherine Matthews, Valley Crucis Elementary School, Watauga County School System. And our 2019 national awardees for the presidential awards in grades 7-12 in mathematics from the Southwest District, Tyler Erb, Community House Middle School, Charlotte Mecklenburg School. And in grades 7-12 in science from the Western District, Jill Francis, Chase High School, Rutherford County Schools. The finalists and awardees recognition will continue at a luncheon this afternoon here at DPI, where they'll receive further recognition from the Association of State Supervisors in Mathematics, the Council of State Science Supervisors, and the National Science Foundation. The 2022 Presidential Awards cycle, focusing on kindergarten to 6th grade teachers in the STEM teaching fields for both public and private schools, is currently accepting nominations and applications. Anyone, including parents and state board members, can nominate an outstanding teacher for the Presidential Awards by visiting www.pamst.org. Thank you for taking the time to recognize and honor some of North Carolina's best science, technology, engineering, and mathematics teachers.
We've got more room down here.
The vice chair's not already.
Get everybody. We left a spot for you. Come on, I won't let him. Well.
And 1, 2, 3, and one more, and 1, 2, and 3.
We're just working
This way.
We'd never lose you in a crowd.
And 1, 2, and 3. And one more, 1, 2, and 3.
Good morning. We are excited to recognize Mr. Howard Ginsberg as the 2021 recipient of the North Carolina Science Teachers Association Distinguished Service in Science Education Administrator Award. It's a mouthful. The North Carolina Science Teachers Association Distinguished Service in Science Education Administrator Award is given to a person exhibiting leadership in science education, contributing to improvements in science education, and excelling in the aspects of science education. This honor is determined by other science educators throughout the state and serves as a recognition of Mr. Ginsberg's professional excellence and contributions to science education in North Carolina. Before I invite him up to provide remarks, I would like to read one of Mr. Ginsberg's nominators' comments. Howard works tirelessly to advance STEM education in North Carolina. His work starts with the belief that for students in North Carolina to have a productive future, they need to be able to be problem solvers, to access and use information in new and innovative ways, to work in teams, communicate effectively, and to be engaged in their own learning. The traditional model of education is no longer an option for students. Howard makes a compelling case that STEM education ties all of those skills together. It's not only his knowledge of STEM that is noteworthy, it is his humor and the warm way he engages with everyone. Howard works hard to make NCDPI an agency that is responsive and approachable. He is a trusted advisor to me in my work, and I'm sure he is for others. So now I would like to invite Mr. Ginsberg up for a few remarks.
Good morning again. I'm a product of 80s education, and I turned out okay. This phrase has been said to me by many individuals I've encountered since taking on my role as STEM consultant at DPI. Many managers of retail industries, restaurants, and other traditional opportunities have certainly gone on and achieved great success using what they experience and learn through their traditional educational instruction. With changing times, however, come new responsibilities. The top paying careers that exist today did not exist 40 years ago. Today's leading employment opportunities in fields like genetic engineering, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, data science, and countless others all demand a skill set for which traditional education lacked focus. According to U.S. News and World Reports in 2020, 8 of the top 10 STEM jobs came with annual salaries surpassing $100,000 a year. Being competitive in today's global economy necessitates that North Carolina employers are able to hire North Carolina graduates who are prepared with the 21st century skills these new industries require. STEM education provides the opportunity for students to develop their creativity, to think critically, expand communication skills, and work collaboratively as they problem solve and make real-world connections through our content area standards. The educational approach of STEM is founded on research that has afforded us a better knowledge and understanding of how to engage and empower learners, and when we know better, we do better. I'm grateful and appreciative of the opportunity I've been given to serve North Carolina and support schools across our state that recognize the high value which quality STEM instruction offers their students. I'm fortunate to work with so many incredible minds across the Division of Academic Standards, as well as within our Division of Career and Technical Education. I value the support I receive from the leadership in this room, and I'm humbled that the North Carolina Science Teachers Association has recognized the efforts of our work in supporting STEM across our state. Thank you for the honor of this recognition.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. You give and you receive. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
One, two, and 3, and 1 more. 1, 2, and 3.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thought that was for you.
You got your name on there.
He doesn't just.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have a very special recognition and word of thanks. At our January meeting, our next local board advisor and Dingman Award winner, Mr. Worley Edwards from Columbus County, will be joining us. However, today we have the high honor to extend our thanks to our current local board advisor and Dingman Award winner, Ms. Brenda Stevens of Orange County. Ms. Stevens, we want to thank you for your service, not just as an advisor on this board, but particularly your leadership in Orange County and for setting such a great example for us. Would you like to make a few
Well,
comments?
actually, I'm not a talker. Yes, I am. My nose is growing. But seriously, it has been both an honor and a privilege to join you all around this table as you do great work for the children in this great state of North Carolina. I will say that the memories and friends that I've made, needless to say, I will remember you always. And you've touched my life, you all of you have. And I'll be forever grateful, and thank you. because that's what I wore to Blue at work because it's warm. Well, again, in the center, great.
It was between two thorns. Is what I-
She'll remember that always.
Can't take that back.
He thought Alan was standing there.
Yeah, I did. Why don't you get two roses? Two roses surrounded by-
And 1, 2, and 3. And 1, 2, and 2.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, you too. Likewise. And we do.
Get in here too.
I did ask.
We do.
Yeah, we'll do it. Okay. All right, we'll now take a 10-minute break and be back in 10 minutes.
Be back in 15.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't do the math in my head. We are back in session, and one special recognition that we had planned for this month is to recognize Dr. Beverly Emery, but we're going to reschedule that presentation until January. So we look forward to that special event. And I'll turn to Superintendent Truitt for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Good morning, everyone. I am really excited about today's report. First of all, it's going to be shorter than usual because I'm going to yield my time to Alexis and Freebird to talk about the budget. Is Alexis here?
She will be.
Oh, there you are. Okay. So the purpose of my report this morning is to let you all know about the AIM conference, which took place Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. So a few months ago, Vanessa Wren came to me and said, you know, I really think that we need to start having a conference again. We haven't had one for a couple of years, and even before COVID. And it's time. It's time to do this, and we need to do it in a new and different way. And we think that it can be the best conference that DPI has ever put on. And one thing led to another, and all of a sudden we were planning a conference. And Julie Pittman, who the chair recognized this morning as being kind of the mastermind behind all of this, worked hand in hand with Vanessa's team, led by Jill Darrow, the digital teaching and learning team, to put on what ended up being a first-class conference for the educators in our state. So we were very clear at the beginning that the mission of this conference would be to align the objectives of the board and DPI with the work taking place in the field. Or in other words, to let the field know about the state board strategic plan and Operation Polaris. You know, when we're all rowing in the same direction, that's how we get the farthest, the fastest. And we've seen that, if you think about it, we've seen that with our Science of Reading initiative. Talk about everyone being on the same page. I mean, that was, you know, you had legislation that passed with near unanimous support bicamerally and bipartisan support. The governor's office signed it very quickly. This board and DPI had already been working on the Science of Reading, so you can, and districts. We've learned over the last several months that we had districts who were already doing the work of realigning their practices to the science of reading. So we thought, wouldn't it be great if the field knew what the state board strategic plan was, as well as Operation Polaris. So what the team did was to build the work sessions around those two plans. And this was done through regional teams. So districts sent district teams to the conference, and the very first thing they did was meet in a room with their regional director. And I happened to go in, I chose the Northeast region to sit in on, and got to hear what was happening in Halifax County, Perquimans County. Tyrrell County was there, all three people from their central office. I mean, there were small but mighty teams that I got to meet with in the Northeast region. So our goals were to allow this collaboration to occur regionally for districts who, you know, one of the common themes that I heard from teams was we were kind of we were standing still with our strategic plan. We didn't know where to go from where we were, and now we know what to do. I heard that time and time again. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of districts and school initiatives that will now be aligned with statewide initiatives. We also created opportunities to get real feedback from schools and districts on Operation Polaris and other statewide initiatives, like the Drive Task Force, for example. So I wanted to share, 90 districts sent teams to this conference. It's just incredible, 90 districts. We had 1,100 educators at this conference. The room was packed. It was absolutely incredible. 35 charter schools, all 6 lab schools. The North Carolina Virtual Public School team was there. And we had all kinds of other stakeholders and partners. NC Ed Corps was there, Best NC was there, the Public School Forum was there. We just had all kinds of participation. And before I close, I just want to share a couple of takeaways and observations. First of all, one of the heaviest lifts was to make this a free conference for educators, and it was 100% free for them. There was no registration fee, and we were able to do that because of the hard work of the team and our sponsors. So that's one thing. One of the other things that I will really always remember about this conference is that even though we're kind of coming out the other side of this pandemic, but not out of it yet, there was so much positivity from our educators. And there was honesty about the effects of the pandemic and teacher fatigue and educator fatigue, but it was also characterized by empathy and a sense of wanting to leverage something positive out of the last 23 months. And that was really incredible to see 1,100 tired educators be positive and want to initiate change for the better was a sight to behold. I attended a lot of different sessions. I attended a session on standards-based grading that was absolutely incredible. I heard a lot of CTE discussions about how schools want to do a better job of connecting a child's K-12 experience to what happens after high school. The Sandhills region has created a teacher collaborative across the district that is developing a social studies curriculum aligned to the standards that will be available to any teacher who wants to use it. Absolutely incredible. But the best part was that instead of paying for a keynote speaker, Julie and her team arranged for us to be inspired not by a national speaker that we would have paid, but by our own students. And we heard from about 10 students who shared with us their North Carolina school experience and the impact that it has had on them personally. We heard from a student with special needs. We heard from a student who is first-generation American and who's been helping her cousin who came to this country a couple of years ago from Mexico and talk about how their school has supported them. We heard from a student who had been in a car accident towards the end of his high school journey, who credits his coach, his teachers, and his principal in helping him come back from the brink of death. There was so much joy and passion that came from those students as they were telling us about their North Carolina school experience. That everyone in the room was moved. That collective inspiration, I think, will stay with the educators who attended that conference. Our advisors were at the conference, participated in the conference. Thank you all for that. And so we were all impacted, for sure. And I just can't wait to see what this team does with a whole year to plan instead of just 4 months. So thank you all. And now I'm going to turn it over to Alexis, who gave a great presentation. Well, you know, only Alexis can make numbers exciting. And so, yes, thank you, Alexis, for your work at the conference this past week. I know that part of our goal was for our educators to put names and faces of those of us at DPI. And Alexis, you were a big part of helping to do that. So I turn it over to you.
I appreciate that. Yes, talking to educators about the budget process is not exactly my comfort zone. It was a little of an unusual audience, but definitely nice to be included in that. So before I start on the budget, I do want to just introduce our latest or our newest director. It did take some time to complete the leadership team in FBS. And I introduced Joyce Monroe to you back in July as the Director of Agency Financial Services. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Jennifer Bennett as the Director of School Business. And she is back here. Jennifer has 25 years of experience in North Carolina public school finance, including at DPI in a large, wealthy LEA, as well as a small, very low wealth LEA. And she has been, during her career, she also assisted LEAs as a contractor in many different LEAs across the state. And as you know, North Carolina public school finance is like no other in accounting, budget, or business, actually in the entire world. So being able to bring her on with such a depth of experience, and she came in with kind of boots on the ground, has made an immediate impact on the staff and the public school unit. So I am just incredibly happy to have her on board with me, and just in time to implement this budget. So, yes, yay. I've told her, like, I think it's just been about 3 times I've said, I'm so happy you're here, because this budget is a lot, and that's kind of how we start off with this. I'm going to start with the salaries. When we're looking at the budget as a whole, there's about $460 million goes towards public school employee salary and benefits, as well as new supplements, which we'll get into. The remaining $200 million are expansion items, not including the capital. And then we have also the ESSER 3 that was appropriated in this budget. So looking at what everyone's interested in, right? Compensation, we don't do this for free. So we have the teacher and most instructional support positions will receive a step increase plus a 1.3% increase to that A schedule. Since 2017, we have seen some pretty significant increases in our teacher pay schedule, from about 2% to 7% annually. But in the last 2 years, we saw step increases. That's about $1,000 to most steps until it kind of caps out at those veteran level teachers. So we're happy to see these changes. Just to make it very clear, a step increase, as I said, is generally about $1,000 until you reach those upper levels. So depending on what step you are on, the percentage will change, and so that's why you see that $650 increase to $32.70. So it depends on where you are on that scale as to what that percentage and dollar amount increase it is. But when we take all the teachers and instructional support as a population, and the total average increase for the year is 2.5%. We do have in the second year of the biennium the expectation of another 2.5%. Those increases do not include new supplements, which in this term is really just a new salary schedule for our school psychologists, our speech language pathologists, and our audiologists. And they shall receive a salary schedule that will increase by $350 per month on those steps, so for a total of $3,500 for the year. And then for a counselor, the state supplement will be an additional $100 per month, or $1,000 for the year. The very popular change to the personal leave deduction will also have a significant increase, even if it's not a total financial huge impact. It is kind of a professional, definitely kind of professionalizing the leave allowability for our teachers who are not permitted to take annual leave on an instructional day, with the exception of personal leave. Prior to this budget bill, they had a $50 deduction to their pay if they took personal leave and a substitute was employed. The legislation has changed this to remove that $50 deduction if the teacher provides a reason for the leave. And if no reason is provided, then the full amount of a substitute, which is more in the $115 range, will be deducted. But then, if no substitute is employed, then the LEA is to refund that. And I kind of touched on that yesterday. I should put in the notes column there, you will see some SBE policies. These are the policies that need to be changed. Some of them I went through yesterday when we went through the allotment, the initial allotment policy changes, as well as the salary manual changes. And so when it says December 21, I presented those yesterday. And if there is nothing, then they are still to come. So when we move on to teacher supplement amounts, we have a new allotment category, teacher supplement allotment. This is $100 million. It is significant. It is a new allotment that is weighted by low wealth factors, and those factors being county tax base, that's the majority of the weighting at 65%, the median household income, and the effective tax rate. It kind of looks very similar to our low wealth supplemental funding. However, there is not kind of a cutoff. Well, there is a cutoff. I guess it's a different cutoff, where with low wealth supplemental funding, only those that are below the state average are eligible for any funding. With this, it only excludes those districts or those counties that have a tax base of greater than $45 billion. Those are 5 counties that will be excluded. And then when you're looking at, it is graduated, so not all counties receive the same amount per ADM. When you're looking at a kind of a preliminary analysis of this, it will look more like some district, the range per teacher will be about $400 per teacher to about $6,000 per teacher, depending on the county. We will be bringing this policy to you hopefully in January, although we have a lot to do before then, but that is our intent to get that to you so we can get those allotments out. There is also a small and low wealth signing bonus. These are signing bonuses for that are only if you are a school district that receives small or low wealth supplemental funding. Are you eligible for these funds? But it does require a match from the local funds, and they do have to be local. That a district cannot use federal funds for any matching purpose. That is a federal legislation on that. So there is a 1-to-1 up to $1,000 for those districts. And then the highly qualified teacher supplement, these are for new graduates. It is not a new program, but I put it there just really to complete that slide so you can see all the state-funded supported recruitment and recruitment initiatives. Going to the bonuses, and there are quite a lot here, and you'll see on the right-hand side that they are sourced from different pieces of funding, source of funding. We have a $300 for all state-funded teachers and instructional support. That is in lieu of those 3 through 8th grade math and reading performance bonuses. In other words, instead of providing those bonuses to specific teachers based on performance, the funding is distributed across the board to all. Last year we had a similar thing. It was $350, and there is intent to reinstitute those performance bonuses when there is a desire on using those EVAR scores. There is $1,000 for each teacher based on the ESSA 3 funding. So that is an additional bonus. The teachers do have to have completed COVID training to be eligible for that. There is a $1,000 bonus for all public school employees, regardless of their funding source, and an additional $500 if their salary is less than $75,000. This is paid from the state fiscal recovery funds, which is similar to the CRF funds that we have, meaning they come from the federal government to the General Assembly, and then the General Assembly can utilize those funds as they deem fit. This bonus goes to all state employees as well. So this is not just something for public schools. And then that bottom is to reinstitute the performance bonuses for the AP, IB, and the AICE up to the $3,500. That is for the test results to those teachers that were that contributed to that, and then also the CTE credential bonuses are also reactivated. Moving to the school-based administrators, our assistant principals, their salary flows through the teacher schedule, so that will they remain at the A schedule plus 19%. There is no change to that. The principal schedule, which is kind of more like that grid, if you recall, the principals are paid based on a 3-year growth of their schools and the size of their schools. So that entire grid was increased by 2.5%. And the size of the school will be recalibrated to the 2022 ADM starting January. Supplements and bonuses related to school-based administrators. Again, consistent with the teacher, instead of performance bonuses, all principals will receive an $1,800 bonus. So last year, the principals received the same performance bonus they earned before. Now that has stopped, and it will be spread across the board to all. They are eligible for those fiscal recovery bonuses. And then I put in here again, to make it a complete slide, the $30,000 principal recruitment supplement for low-performing schools. These are for the specific schools that are identified by the department, and the principal has to be in a high-growth or high-performing principal. If they can go into those schools, then they are eligible for a $30,000 supplement for 3 years. Now we move to the other employees. All non-certified or our classified employees, they will receive the higher of a 2.5% increase and a $13 per hour minimum. And in that legislation, in the appropriations bill, it does state that it will be $15 per hour for the next year. When we're looking at that, we do have that is for all school employees, all public school employees. So that is not just state funded. That would expand out to all the employees, although the funding is only provided for those state funded. For central office, we are happy to see that they are also receiving that 2.5%. In recent years, that has not been the case. They have received different or no increases compared to the state employees. When we move to the benefits, we talked about this at the planning meeting, the impact of the benefits, the retirement rate, and the health rate. Oh, sorry. I'm following my own slides there. Just talking about the bonuses, our classified employees will also receive that fiscal recovery fund bonus. Thank you. My apologies. So moving to those benefits, they have been increased. The retirement rate was 21.68%. It is now increased to 22.89%. We heard from Treasurer Falwell yesterday on the impacts of that on our budget. For the health rate, you can also see even a larger increase. And looking at, we do have a 2-year, right? Our budget is for the biennium, and so they do have the potential percentages for the next year, for the next fiscal year, where we will see also a significant increase in those 2 benefit rates. Okay, so I put in, related to implementing this, the timing of these benefits. I cannot stress to you the amount of calculation and work it will be to calculate the retroactive bonus payments that these school districts will have to pay out. The timing we are hoping would be in January, but I would not be surprised if it would, for some school districts, it will slip back. We have tried to work within our systems, at the school district systems, to see how much we can help them in kind of automating this. We're not confident that the systems will be able to manage all that calculation. But in short, the legislation does state that the payments, the increase in salary from July 1 to December 31st is to be paid in the new year. It does not provide a specific date. And the employee does have to be employed on December 31st. So it is not retroactive for all those people employed during that time, just those that remain employed December 31st. All the bonuses that I talked about are also paid after January 1, and there are some different requirements depending on which bonus it is. Generally, they do have to be employed. I think the earliest is December 1 to be eligible for those. There was a technical correction on some of those, so the dates did shift. And then all the benefit adjustments are also to be made after January 1, which will be a significant calculation also. Even for us calculating people, it's a lot. So. All right, so now we get into the allotment categories, and I've kind of grouped them to try and make it a little bit easier to digest. The first one is our exceptional children, and you will see there $13.1 million. This is 2 aspects. First of all, the cap was increased from 12.75%, meaning that previously a county was capped at the full funding of the exceptional children headcount of 12.75% of their allotted ADM. So that has increased to 13%, which, based on our analysis, it will reduce the number of LEAs that are capped from about 61 to 55. It will also increase, more importantly, I guess, it will provide about another 1,000 fully funded exceptional children. So that's good news. But something which people may not have realized is that there was actually also an increase in that headcount amount from our base budget to the final budget. It did move up to $4,600, which was a $50 increase. So over a 10% increase in that funding for that program. I mentioned yesterday about the Exceptional Children Reserve. That's $25 million. That's and it is not 40 million, it is $25 million, for the allocation for a difference of the exceptional children headcount in April of last year, which is how they are initially funded. And if they see a significant increase in the number of exceptional children that return to the public schools this year, then we do have funding to kind of provide additional funds to those districts. There is also a permissible use of our special state reserve to provide funding for the extraordinary costs for some of our exceptional children have special transportation needs, and so that does permit us to use that special state reserve for that purpose. And then there is also a funding study. It's only at $27,500, but it is a study to contract to recommend funding how to fund the different categories of our exceptional children body. So that will hopefully come to you before in the new year, so that we can see what they are recommending. The new school psychologist allotment, we talked about this yesterday. That was a policy that was brought to you. It will fund about a total of 477 positions, and 33 of those positions will be transferred out to the charter schools to be funded on a dollars per ADM for it. But something to note is that 362 of those positions, actually a little bit more, were actually transferred from our instructional support position allocations into this new school psychologist. So although we see about $9 million in new money, the $31 million was actually transferred from the instructional support allocation. There were 3 new military counselors. Again, we discussed this yesterday. One for Cumberland and one for Onslow to make to add on to their current allocation for those military counselors. But we do receive 1 FTE for DPI that is new. The small county tiers, this only impacts Hyde County. Those bottom tiers, as discussed yesterday, were combined into one. So for state grants, these are, I guess the term grant is used loosely for this, but our cooperative innovative high schools, there were those 8 schools that were previously approved by the state board. They were funded with non-recurring money. We do have the recurring funds for that, so that is definitely a positive. We have additional money for the advanced teaching roles. And then for the school safety grants, we do have $18 million for the recurring for the school resource officers. This is in addition to that. It is $9.6 million, the majority of which is for school safety equipment grants. The other 2 are smaller categories, but the first 2 are for partnership with community-based nonprofits, and then the school safety equipment grant will go to the school districts for that purpose. It is non-recurring, and I will say, take this opportunity, because this may be in some other places. Connectivity, I believe, will be another place like this, that with the late passage of the budget, it will be a challenge for school districts for us to get these funds out and for them to expend them, especially when we consider the supply chain issues that we are currently experiencing in our economy. Just so you know, with these school safety grants also, it is kind of unusual that it is under the state superintendent, the designation of who receives those funds. So the awards often do not come to the state board, but the allotment policy will. And then there is a new grant for these $250,000 for feminine hygiene grant that is at $5,000 for each school that is awarded. For the state grant programs continued, we have a new transportation reserve for homeless and foster children. This is, we are developing that policy, and hopefully we'll bring that to you so that we can get those funds out for that population of students. There is also a charter school transportation grant fund. This actually was kind of in a pilot previously, and so we have had this in the past, where for school districts that, for charter schools that serve a specific population of students that you can see there, they can request to be reimbursed up to 65% of those expenditures, and that is administered through the Office of Charter Schools. And then we have the Smart School Bus Safety Pilot. This really isn't, it is sort of a grant, but the awardees are named in the legislation. If you recall, Mount Airy participated in this program. They were funded through CRF funds. This program is funded through the State Fiscal Recovery Fund. So these are not state funds that are supporting that. Additional related to technology, we had $4.6 million on connectivity for expansion budget for that program. We have the school technology funds, $18 million. This really is bringing back that appropriation into our school tech fund. We had a one-year kind of diversion of that $18 million to support the school system modernization project, and so this is putting that back into where it was kind of pre-COVID levels or pre-2021 levels. There is cybersecurity for $7 million for both years of the biennium, although they are non-recurring for both years, but it is in there for the second year. And then the compliance contract for the Children's Internet Protection Act. There is no additional funds for this, but it does permit being funded out of the digital learning plan funds, the $450,000, and that is for a contract. We are all very happy to see that the system modernization funds were in the final budget, so we can go full force on that at almost $49 million. It also allows us to have a grant program to fund school districts that do not want to go to that new ERP, but it requires them to house all their systems off the PSU site. So as a security measure, that is in there as a requirement. For moving on to the last school district, we have the Teach NC recruitment initiative, including 1 FTE, as well as the charter school management system that we are all very familiar with. We've seen it in many requests and many preliminary budgets, and now it has made it into a final budget for that $250,000 system that really supports the Office of Charter Schools and the department as a whole in monitoring our charter schools as required by legislation. When we move on to the department side of it, we have a major item with our computer science funding, including 5 FTE for that. This is something that we've seen in preliminary budgets in the past and has now been awarded. The NROC program for the Career and College Ready Graduate Program is also supported there with 1 FT in addition. And then the Excellent Public Schools Act, we did have Session Law 2021-8, which was the Read to Achieve bill. That probably sounds like a long time ago now, but that was passed early in the session, and there is an additional $6.5 million in non-recurring funds in the first year and $5.5 million in the second year for that implementation. And now for the highlight of the entire budget, Financial and Business Services received 3 FTEs. I'm very, very excited. This has been a long-going request, and I really do appreciate the support over at the General Assembly for this, especially when we're going through this budget with the increase. These FTE will be One will be dedicated to charter schools, which we do not have at this point, and we definitely need to be able to support not only our charter schools, but the Office of Charter Schools from the financial area, as well as student accounting, and then in our budget area. We are also very excited to have a $2.2 million to partner with the North Carolina Association of School Business Officials. They're an excellent organization that supports the finance officers and the offices of the public school units, not just LEAs, but also charter schools. And that goes from the school treasurer to all the way up to the finance officers. They have a great academy that they certify finance officers, but it will also now, we will be able to leverage all their experience to support the school districts and being able to build that capacity within our public school units and understand all the public school resources and the budgeting impacts of our funds. And not just the state funds, but also the federal funds and the local funds. There is also 2 internal audit positions. That was a kind of a statewide initiative to put more internal audit within state agencies. So DPI is benefiting from that also. For the school safety training facility, I put these under kind of professional development-ish. But there is $1.7 million recurring and $300,000 non-recurring for school safety training. This is for the Center of Safest Schools to create and operate a new training facility in conjunction with the Department of Public Safety. And then $1.4 million for NCAT, in addition to increasing their total appropriation. And then a late item to the budget that we did not see in the House and the Senate is for the Holocaust Education Act. And that is, the state board is to review that middle and high school standard course of studies, as well as integrate professional development on Holocaust and genocide. So that, I believe, rounds out the professional development. On the capital side, I'm certainly not the expert on capital. I leave that to Nathan Morney, but there is the needs-based public school capital fund was increased with an additional $70 million to increase that total amount. It does have a lot of different parameters, but it does now include almost all counties. It does exclude counties that have a tax base greater than $40 billion, and it still prioritizes to those Tier 1 counties. And then there is a sliding scale for the match for those funds. And then a new allocation for repair and renovation at $300,000 for each county, increasing to $500,000 for next year. A couple of items I put on the end, they actually do not have financial impact, but I want to put them here because they are, I thought, quite interesting and revealing as to the thoughts of the General Assembly. The first item is that the state board is required to establish a formula for determining the full-time equivalency of students in public school units. As you know right now, our funding is based on average daily membership, and that is kind of very binary, right? It's either you get a 1 or a 0. So a full-time equivalent of students, which actually is more how the community college does it, would sort of say, well, if you are, half enrolled at a community college versus a public school, then it would be 0.5 as opposed to a full whole. And so it is looking at how we would do that for public school students, which is not, I have actually looked into this in the past based on inquiry. It's not as easy as it sounds. We don't have credits in North Carolina, so to be able to determine what a full-time fifth grader is, it makes it a challenge. But that is what we're tasked with, and we take on that challenge. The EC formula, I did already discuss that, but it's kind of all involved in that student accounting and how we would do it. I added it as a duplication on this. And then the dual enrollment opportunity study, and this is to conduct a study examining the factors impacting all students' ability to complete high school courses, leading to college credit and the associate's degree, or being career ready and having a credential for that. So it does also examine all those dual enrollment courses. So it kind of, to me, fits in with that student FTE. So I placed them all together. The final item that is in the budget is ESSA 3. I am not going to go through all the items, but I will say that we will be bringing to you 13 new PRCs for the allotment policies and the allocations to those public school units. If you keep in mind, these are federal funds. We cannot just allocate them out. We have to get that approval of the distribution for many of these. Also, all funds require an approved application and a budget from each public school unit prior to the distribution. We are working closely with not only the Division of the Federal Programs area in kind of coming up with the most expeditious way to develop those applications in our systems, but also assigning all those business owners around the department to kind of spread the load and kind of get these and provide that technical assistance to those school districts on each one of these grants. It's a lot, I will tell you that. So we went through this kind of drill, I guess, back in 2020 when we were kind of going through with the CRF, and then we had the CARES Act. This will be a kind of a similar type drill that we can expect so that we can get these funds out as soon as we can and implement those programs. There is also 12 contracts. There are 2 transfers out to other state agencies that will require MOUs. There are 26 positions for the department that are in that. 20 of those positions are for district and school transformation. We have 5 for the Office of Learning Recovery, and then 1 more. And then there are 4 reports within ESSA 3, but I should also take this opportunity to say that in the state portion of the appropriations bill, there is a lot of reports. I couldn't count them all for this, but there will be a significant number of additional reports that will have to come to you, and some of them with some very tight timelines for the department to complete. The largest items, they make up about 80% of the ESSA 3, and some of these should already be familiar to you. There is $100 million of those of the ESSA 3 that is. We had about $320 million that was unappropriated, I guess. The other items, we already had the minimum amounts for the public school units and some amounts that went to the residential schools. So this is on top of that. We have $100 million that is for teacher bonuses that I discussed earlier. We have $72 million in 2 different types of programs to address learning loss and provide enrichment. One for the summer, during the summer, and I believe the other one is during the school year. There is the $37.5 million for the science of reading, principal leadership training, as well as those 20 DPI FTE. There is $16 million to mitigate cyberbullying, and then $13.5 million for the NC Ed Corps. So those are the kind of the 80% of it. And then if you have not heard enough, we have plenty of information on our website that we continue to put out there. You will see on there that we have our guidance documents. We are developing those as quickly as we can, specifically focusing on those salary payments, who's eligible, who is not, what the funding's for, and all those things. So we are working very diligently to get that information out to the school districts, the public school units, so that they can do their best in meeting the requirements. And with that, I would be happy to take any additional questions.
Questions for Ms. Schaus?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hall?
thank you. You are unique in the manner in which you make numbers sound reasonable. And that is who you are, and I appreciate that. So we're not here like me trying to figure out all these dollars, but you make it sound reasonable. Here's my question, a couple of questions if I can. I have a whole lot, I probably type it up and send it to you after listening to you this morning. The first thing is, there's a misconception about LEAs and their monies, or the monies. Some people think it's sitting out there in somebody's bank right now, and the LEA can write a check on it. Is there a time frame for drawing money down, or is that just a myth that's been out here for years?
No, that's an excellent question. So there is a difference between an allocation and between cash. And if that is the question, then when we're calculating all the total annual allocations, we put those out to the public school units and say, this is how much you can prepare to budget for. When the school district expends their funds, for instance, if they are running a payroll, then they calculate the payroll for that month. They then request the cash from the state to cover that payroll, and then the amount that is expended goes against their allocation. So the allocation is really their state budgeted amount, but that is different from expenditures in cash.
But if you're running payroll today and you want to pay tomorrow, is that a turnaround time reasonable?
The finance officers do have to plan. They cannot just, it's not instant. It's not like you can go to your ATM. They have kind of, a 3-day window that they manage their cash.
That's my point.
Yes.
Is that
And
window-
it is an art.
What was SRO? Is SROs?
Those are our school resource officers?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that in there anywhere? I didn't.
So that it is not in there because it is not additional. However, we still have, we have in our at-risk allotment, we have funded for one school resource officer for every high school, and we also have a grant for our elementary middle schools of $18 million on top of that.
Do you maintain a list of those schools that is in need of a high-performing principal in order for them to receive that 30 grand out there? Who maintains that list?
Yes, so it is the list of the schools that are eligible for the low performing. It is actually stipulated how we are to do that in the legislation. We do have a list. I being the financial and business services area, works very closely with, Bev Emory and the district and school transformation area, because of course those schools, they're very similar, and we both have the list, but there is a defined list. We can offer up to 40 supplements. It is capped, and so we start with the top and we ask those people. The school districts do not have to participate. They do have to elect to participate in that program. So sometimes for their own reasons they elect not to participate, and then we move down the list.
Thank you. I'll stop there.
Ms. White?
Thank you. Ms. Schaus, yesterday, you walked us through, I think this is Biz Op 2, Vice Chair Duncan, the policy modifications related to the budget and session law. And through that, you walked through the allotments as they particularly related to charter schools and the hold harmless provision. Had some inquiries last night after we left the board table. That folks sort of missed that explanation about, first of all, thankful for the carryover for ADM, hold harmless for charter schools. Remember my analogy about turbulence and students in and students out? I won't go through that again because I botched it the first time. But could you walk us through how the second year of hold harmless for charter school allotment, because we're going to approve that today in Biz Op 2, how you came to that and the 2%, and then I think you mentioned that 60% of the schools, charter schools, would be held harmless, and then 40% would not. How did that fall? Is there a list of schools that would actually qualify for the hold harmless, and those who would not? I'm sure they would know, because they know the projections that they make, but can you walk through that again so that my charter friends will understand what we're approving today?
Sure, and I do want to make sure that it's clear that, everyone is held harmless. It depends on what they're held harmless to. So, and I did go through a lot, and it was late in the day, so I can understand how some of the details were not kind of clear. When we developed this board policy last year, we tried to make it as comparable as we could to what how the legislation treats the local education agencies. For LEAs, there is a threshold of a 2% or 100 student on kind of how, on their adjustment. When we did the projection, we looked at, for the charter schools, in evaluating that, we took that 2%, so it was kind of a comparable percentage point. So when we were unlike school districts where DPI is actually we are making those projections, right? We look at those birth rates and the in-migration, out-migration. We come up with the projections. For the charter schools, they provide us a number, right? And it has to be within their legislative maximums. But that number, some of the charter schools are much better at giving a truer projection than others. And there is no penalty per se on it, but we, if you're always saying, okay, yes, I'm going to increase 15%, and you stay flat, we did not see it appropriate to provide that 15% as a true projection. So when we were looking at the threshold, we kept the 2% consistent with kind of that LEA threshold, and then those charter schools that were permitted to be funded, held harmless to that projection, they are held harmless to the current year, their prior year, because it may have been higher than the current year, or their projection. If they were not held harmless, if we did not feel like we could rely on the history of that projection, which we did give them the benefit of, 1 of 2 years, so it wasn't just 1 year that we took 2 years, then they are held harmless to the higher of this current year or last year. And we did not put in that projection, as we felt like it did not have a solid history of being accurate. It's a lot of pieces to it, but yes, that's.
Well, thank you for re-articulating that, and I will echo Mr. Hall, my colleague Mr. Hall's comments. It is absolutely amazing that you have command of line item budget allotments across our state. It is remarkable. It's a gift, really. But thank you for re-articulating. It was late in the day, and fatigue had set in, and I think perhaps some of the folks that would have been interested in that explanation had turned to other things. So thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome.
We have time for one more. Vice Chair Duncan.
Thank you for the report, Alexis. As always, we appreciate very much the way that you take very complex matters and set them out with good explanations. With some of the funding for teacher raises or bonuses, is there a component that where some of it would only go to state employees, and if you happen to be a local teacher hire or a, let's say, federal funded position, where you would not be in position to receive those? Is there a component of some of those numbers that you put up there that will fall in that category?
There are, and I don't have all the details on it. It is what it states, I believe the $300 one stipulates that it is for state funded. This would go under the category of the state is funding, and it's not unusual the state is funding the bonuses for their funded employees, just like the state funds the salary increases for state-funded employees. They do not fund them for federally funded employees or locally funded employees. So a lot of the unusual nature actually is that the bonuses that actually are for all employees, that actually is more unusual than where the language stipulates state-funded.
Second question, just this is really for clarity. The 5 counties that were left out of the $100 million supplement portion of legislation, I think you said it was based on $45 billion in total property value assessed within the county?
It's tax base.
Yeah. So I think that was the tax-based approach used. And so it's clear that was used instead of a different kind of approach which could have been used, which was a per capita average for tax base in the various counties in the state. It's not per capita, it was just total.
That is my understanding at this.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said, we're still getting into the details of that, but that is my understanding, yes.
And that was the policy choice made by the legislature to do it that way, based on what you provided to us.
Yeah, the language is very specific in that program, and I'm sure that when we get and presenting the policy for your the recommended policy for your approval, we can show and illustrate the impact, the financial impact between all the different districts.
There's a lot of commentary about it, so I think it's helpful to at least understand what the basis for how those counties were either included or not included, and that is important for full understanding as a starting point to any discussion. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Schaus. I'm sure we'll have additional discussions about this important budget, so thank you so much. We now also have a couple of other presentations related to recent General Assembly action in our budget, and I'll turn to Mr. McKinney and Mr. Falkenberry for this item.
Good morning. As you can see, we are the ornaments on the tree of Alexis Schaus. So good morning, Chair Davis, Superintendent Truitt, Vice Chair Duncan, Lieutenant Governor Robinson, Treasurer Falwell, board members and advisors, colleagues here at the board and DPI, and our colleagues across this state. As Board Member White reminded us all yesterday, we are in the season of giving, and there's so much we at the board and DPI had to be grateful for. And this was reflected at the recent AIM conference. Over 90 LEAs and around 50 charter and lab schools came together to collaborate, to learn, and to give to our state, our students, and our schools in this season and for days to come. We want to thanks to the committee members and the conference lead, Julie Pittman, and her team for building this space to give and to pour into their colleagues in a solution-based and asset-minded spirit that really drives our efforts here and fuels our vision to re-envision North Carolina Public Schools. So as was shared many times over the conference, it felt like a family reunion. We are also thankful for a budget. So let's turn our attention to where we are during the season and how it reflects our legislative agenda, our strategic plan, Operation Polaris, Leandro, and our vision for the future. For we have miles to go before we sleep, but we are on the path.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Davis, for giving us the time to go over the budget. A little bit more fine detail from what Alexis did to really focus in on what you, the board, and the superintendent and this department really advocated for. I just want to also thank Freeburg McKinney, Ann Murtha, Carson, who left us to go to ECU, but the whole team that really worked together to really put the students first with this budget, and the collaboration that we had with the General Assembly was remarkable, and I want to thank the General Assembly too for listening to a lot of the concerns and strategic plans that we had. I just want to touch real base. You already heard from Alexis Strauss, who did a phenomenal job going over all the high level stuff, but this is the state is putting $1.5 billion in recurring funds into public education, which is a phenomenal feat. The salary increases that Alexis already talked about, this is something that we advocated for, especially with the superintendent when she came into office, and while she was running for office as well. The funding for the school psychologist, this is a great step in the right direction. It is now guaranteed that we will have funding for a school psychologist in every single district. We understand that some districts are larger than others, but now that the funding is there, we can at least start that process of addressing the mental health needs of a lot of our students, especially coming out of this pandemic. And the low-performing school districts to improve literacy, proficiency, and just building on all the science of reading work that we've already done at this department and that the board has funded. I believe we now have fully funded, the state has fully funded the science reading training for all of our teachers and administrators that were part of the state board's plan. So I just want to briefly go over, if you could scroll down a little bit more.
It's being slow.
Okay, cool. Just want to go over the high level stuff right here. What I think is remarkable is that a lot of times throughout the budget process, the Senate puts out their budget, House puts out their budget, Governor puts out their budget, and sometimes they are hundreds of millions, billions of dollars difference, especially when it comes to public education. But as you can see here, it was pretty much right in the same ballpark throughout, if not exactly the same, throughout the entire process. Is that they figured out the number that they wanted, and that's what they went with. And so that just shows you the collaboration, both bicamerally and bipartisan, over at the General Assembly to really put education at the forefront with this budget. And we will go through this, and I'm going to pass it back over to Freebird. We're going to go through this and show you where a lot of the requests that we made, which was $183 million in new funds, were reflected in this current state budget.
So what we wanted to do is just take a brief opportunity, because Alexis did go over it in such depth, and just highlight specifically what were appropriations that reflected legislative agenda items. So as you can see here, funds for children with disabilities, school psychology allotment, and the advanced teaching roles were three requests that we made. Moving on to cybersecurity, the school technology fund, and the cooperative innovative high schools. The college and career ready graduate support program, connectivity and E-rate, as well as the K-12 business systems modernization, which was a huge request there. As Alexis mentioned, a long-awaited request of charter school data management, and then the Teach and See recruitment initiative, which also included one FTE for administrative and recruitment.
And again, with Superintendent Truitt's biggest thing that she's been championing since she came in is definitely the science of reading, and getting and addressing the new Excellent Public Schools Act and Read to Achieve, and they appropriated us another $6.5 million in that. But then did want to focus real quick on some the computer science funding and report. For the first time ever in the state, we will finally have a computer science division in DPI that can assist districts statewide in implementing computer science and training of our teachers. And as we've mentioned before here to the board, and as we conveyed to the General Assembly, kindergartners right now, when they graduate high school, the business sector is telling us that 70% of jobs are going to require some type of computer science background. So this is an investment in students right now, the future, and the students that aren't even born yet. So we really commend the General Assembly for funding this. And then finally, the economic and financial literacy. Because we didn't have a budget the last time, there was a law that was passed that required economics and financial literacy, but we needed to train those teachers. Fortunately, the business community did come in and was able to cobble dollars here or there. I know the department was able to move some money around to help start the professional development of our teachers, but this will now fully fund that requirement so that all of our teachers are trained in economics and financial literacy. And then DPI positions, Alexis covered all these in detail, but we just want to say that it was amazing that the General Assembly and the Governor's Office listened to our request about high demand jobs that we need here to make sure that we and the superintendent and her staff can do the job to present you the numbers in real time, and also to present General Assembly all the information that they need. And we are very grateful for these positions, as well as I just said, the Computer Science Division, that will be 5 new FTEs, and there will be other FTEs scattered throughout the department to help the mission here at DPI. And then finally, with ESSER 3, Alexis didn't go into very specific detail, but I do want to say that there are, what Alexis did focus on is that there are specific vendors that have already been chosen. There were a lot of the initiatives that we at the department and at the state board were advocating for did get reflected in this budget. And for instance, the science reading training is being paid for out of this. Teachers are getting their $1,000 bonuses out of this, but also the work that Michael Marr and his team are going to be able to do with the Office of Learning Recovery is reflected in here with tens of millions of dollars to address for summer learning in the future, as well as learning recovery and unfinished learning that we have seen throughout this pandemic. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Freeberg.
In collaboration with my colleague here, Mr. Coltrane, we wanted to also highlight some of the pieces in the budget that reflected Leandra and the comprehensive remedial plan. And so this budget provides a little more than about 50% of the funding called for in the CRP for year 2, and a little less than 50% in year 3. You can see some of the specifics highlighted here in yellow. So I'm sure many of you are going to get questions that reflect, where was the Leandro plan reflected in the budget? And so we wanted to give you all some of those specifics here, particularly most of that funding being included in increases in salary for educators, administrators, and instructional support personnel. But probably the largest is the fully funding of the program enhancement teacher allotment, which was $139.7 million there. And this was called for in the CRP. Below you will find specifics there, so we did want that to be a resource that you all would have. So thank you, Mr. Coltrane, for helping with that too. I want to quickly thank Vice Chair Duncan, Mr. Hall, and Allison Schaefer for the incredible amount of time and collaboration with the General Assembly and the North Carolina High School Athletic Association in coming together on House Bill 91, Accountability and Fair Play in Athletics. That was a Herculean feat for them. So many hours poured into it, so many different meetings, and this is a bill that was signed by the governor very recently. And that first bullet, I think, is the most important one to look at. The state board would have the authority to enter into an MOU with a nonprofit to administer and enforce state board requirements for high school athletics. Moving down to the second one, those PSUs must then conduct high school athletics in accordance with these rules as administered and enforced by the organization designated by the state board. So if you flip over to the next slide, there is a link to the full bill and summary, as well as some of the more intensive pieces of that bill. Due to time, I'll let that slide lay right there, but please reach out if there's anything specifically that you're getting from some of your constituents in regards to this. Obviously, the next task is to then develop an MOU with the North Carolina High School Athletic Associations with the board. So we will keep you up to date on that process. I now want to bring up Julie Pittman to give you some highlights on the AIM conference specifically tied to the Committee on Government and Community Affairs.
Good morning, and I thank you for having me here today. I know we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to try to keep it as brief as I can. But again, I'm Julie Pittman, a Special Advisor to State Superintendent for Teacher Engagement. Little did I know when I took this job a little less than a year ago that teacher engagement would include bringing together over 1,000 educators in Raleigh face-to-face for the first multi-day conference that's in person, face-to-face, that our state and Raleigh has had. We heard yesterday from our partners at the Raleigh Convention Center, the Marriott and the Sheraton, that they were very excited, and this was a shot in the arm that the city of Raleigh and the state of North Carolina needed. And I know that we heard that from the state superintendent, that this was certainly a shot in the arm that our educators needed. So I wanted to just give a couple of quick highlights as they apply to this particular committee. One of the things that I think is most important to my heart and to this committee particularly is teacher recruitment and retention. And this is exactly what this conference was able to focus on, was how are we able to retain our teachers by treating them as professionals and giving them the opportunity to learn and collaborate together, to hear from each other, and to show off some of the great things that our districts are doing. I would also like to show off something that I don't think has been brought up yet, but we were able to bring on board in partnership for our conference committee the 2020 Burrs Welcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year, Maureen Stover, who is one of your advisors, who was just yesterday recognized as one of People Magazine's top human beings in the country. She is certainly one of my edu heroes, and I was very thankful to be able to work with her throughout this conference, and she deserves all of that recognition and then some. So thank you for your commitment to this conference, to the children and the teachers and educators in North Carolina and all over our country. We're very proud of you.
Thank you. It's truly my pleasure. Thank you.
So several of the things that you see reflected on this slide, our goals, some of our goals for the Community Affairs, Government and Community Affairs Committee are on student health and well-being and whole child, partnerships for teacher recruitment and retention strategies, specifically in recruiting educators of color, and college partnerships on college and community partnerships on teacher recruitment and retention. We had over 10 presentations from our districts and partners within DPI on student mental health and student health and well-being and whole child. Over 10 presentations on partnerships for teacher recruitment and retention. Some of them included student presentations by Johnston County's JoCo Teach, teacher cadets, and profound gentlemen and profound ladies, as well as Keenan Fellowships and several other presentations by our Teacher of the Year cohorts and colleagues. And then in Goal 3, partnerships around teacher recruitment and retention with colleges, and we had over 15 presentations from our partners and districts around that. We heard with our partners at the Public School Forum of North Carolina and the panel that the superintendent was on, as moderated by Mary Ann Wolf from the Public School Forum and my colleague Freeburg McKinney, along with Allison Schaefer, Alexis Schaus, Jeff Coltrane, and then your other two advisors, Brent Williams and Brenda Stevens. Some great things around teacher recruitment and retention. One of the things that stood out to me most was when Ms. Stevens said, we oftentimes ask our elementary school students, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a lawyer? But we often don't ask our students, do you really want to be a teacher? And how awesome that would be. Because as she said, teachers touch the lives of every other profession. And so I was really glad that she lifted that up on day one, and we were able to see that highlighted and echoed throughout the next 3 days. Over the last 12 months, Freebird and I, along with our team and Superintendent Truitt, as well as several members of the board, have been coming to you and showcasing our district visits and voices, visits that we've had across the state of North Carolina. And you and others in the field and at DPI and our partners across the state have asked us, what's next? Now what? Why are you doing this? Well, I'm here to tell you and to brag a little bit on this team and what it's been able to do, that I believe firmly in my soul and in my heart that work that we've laid over the last 12 months is a testament to the ability to bring over 1,100 educators to North Carolina, to Raleigh, for our first face-to-face conference, so that they could showcase the things that we've been seeing in the field in our district visits and voices, and then begin to build out their own strategic plans. I'd encourage you to look at the just published Ed&C article written by Rupen Fafaria on what this conference meant and the spirit of this conference. And the very first picture you'll see is a picture of Halifax County's team in the Northeast region with a very large poster of the State Board Strategic Plan. And at the top it says, North Carolina State Board of Education Strategic Plan 2020 to 2025. And then what you'll see is across the top of that, Halifax County's strategic plan. And then on top of that, you'll see sticky notes that reflect buckets around Operation Polaris and the things that they're doing, but also the things that they have gaps in and where they wanted to push in the breakout sessions that they saw at the conference. And then outside of that, you'll see additional sticky notes that are beginning to build out their own strategic plan that is based off of what they were learning at the conference, how they are aligning it to Operation Polaris, and how it feeds back up to the State Board Strategic Plan. What I hope to be able to bring to you, along with several of our members from the implementation team, and Shelby Armentrout and Dr. Edmonds and others, is how we're learning from what our districts did at this conference to build out their own implementation plan and their own strategic plans, and how we as a state and as an agency can help support that through our implementation plan alongside the work that you all have been doing for the past several years. We hope to be able to grow this conference next year and have the capacity to do so, and to double it over the next few years. And what I want to leave you with are two things: a reflection, and based off of my good friend and colleague Jenny Korn, what she gave to you last month is a little bit of homework. So what I heard was the many thank yous. Thank you for the time to work, the time to connect and reconnect, the time to have fun, the time to be inspired, the time to share, the time to be treated as a professional, and the time to see and collaborate with state leaders and partners across the state, including our own superintendent, who participated in breakout sessions alongside our teachers, our principals, our superintendents, and was able to engage with them, and for them to see her and see others throughout our department participating with them, not leading them, not necessarily telling them what to do, but participating with them, was something that was really incredible. And I believe is a testament to what we are doing to build a true retainment model for our teachers, because there's no better thing than to see our leaders working with our teachers, for them to see that we are all locking arms and being in this together. I said to Ruben and Ed and C and several others that I believe this conference, it will be a catalyst to the next season of education in North Carolina. And then Jenny Korn just texted me a little while ago a new hashtag that we're going to start using, hashtag new season of NC Ed. Finally, your homework. Over the next few months, I'd encourage you to think about, as we bring more information to you, what do you want to know as we build out next year's conference? How can we help you connect with the work in the field? What would you like to see next year? And how can you partner with us in this next conference? And are there any of you who would like to join me and be a part of next year's conference committee planning? I would love to have a member of the state board help us with that, so that we could really build out a true partnership where we could see how our work is aligned up, down, and side to side. Thank you very much for your time. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Ms. Pittman, Mr. McKinney, Mr. Falkenberry, and Ms. Schaus. You've highlighted that this is definitely a team sport. And we've got great leaders on this team, our superintendent, the four of y'all. and we're delighted to be on the same team with you. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us along, but I do want to give our superintendent, if you have any closing comments to add to this.
I don't, other than to, once again, thank all of those who were involved, because yes, education is a team sport. And I can't wait to read the NC article, and I hope you all will too.
Thank you. I think that's a great segue into our first committee, which is chaired by Mr. Hall, our Government and Community Affairs Committee. Mr. Hall, would you like to kick us off on our committee report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to present on behalf of the Governmental and Community Affairs Committee, Vice Chair with Jill Kimmons there. But I was thinking here as they were going through the budget, and by the way, I'm very thankful for the $1.5 billion additional dollars that's put into the budget on behalf of these 5.5 million K-12 students in this great state. It's good to see a lot of the money put where taught used to be, and hopefully we could benefit from that. It was good to hear that the superintendent visited a famous region of mine that I've asked about. Thank you for that. I'm sure the region, the Northeast, was glad to see it. But with that being said, with everything that's being said already, I don't know if anything that the governmental committee can present concerning the budget in effect on public education in this state. Now, unless I'm wrong, do you have anything else, Mr. Freeberg?
We've completed our.
I thought you had. So thank you so much for that opportunity, and we'll be back next month.
Terrific.
We're
Thank you,
gonna put
Mr.
on
Hall.
a conference too. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. We'll now move to the rest of our committee reports, and I'll begin with my colleague, Dr. Olivia Oxendine, Chair of the Educator Standards and Practice Committee. Dr. Oxendine.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I am Olivia Oxendine, Chair of ES&P, and joining me in that leadership responsibility is Ms. Amy White. I'll just take a few minutes and cover the highlights from our reports that we heard and received yesterday. To begin with ES&P 1, this is an action on first reading, and this is going to come to us very soon for our action. And this item was presented to us by Dr. Kim Evans, and she brought to the board's attention several vendor changes in our approved praxis for licensure in the area of chemistry, school librarian, school counselor, and I think those are the three categories. She covered all the new codes that will appear on the website. She also covered the new passing scores, known as, we typically call these scores, the cut scores. And also, she shared with us the effective dates when all of this kicks in. The current tests are good through August 31, 2023. The new tests become effective, though, September 22. So this item is about to come to our attention for a vote. The next item, ES&P 2, is a discussion item, and this item really delved into a good discussion around the school mental health clinician, the job description, and also the salary grade. This is such a needed position in our schools. It really is. We know the value of community-based services, but to have the services for therapeutic services to right there down the hallway from a classroom or down the hallway from the principal's or near the school counselor's office or some other place on the campus is going to be invaluable. So the position is needed. This is an opportunity for school-based services. Remember the great presentation we had last month by Rockingham County. I mean, it was a very in-depth and a very inspiring presentation on the services provided for students. And I think they probably are, I won't say lead the way in the state, but they really are a very good example of school-based mental health services. So maybe this is going to move us in that direction. I would hope so. So it's also going to give us an opportunity to expand the suite of student services available in our schools. So the issue at hand yesterday that was discussed yesterday is this $56,000 salary level that was presented in, I think it's probably policy 7, the area of 71 in the code, in the policy manual. So based on concerns from the field, from the Association of School Psychologists and perhaps some other associations, I'm not aware of any others, I am aware of the association's letter that each of us received, concerns about the crossover of school social workers, school counselors, those in the area of all across the student services might be tempted to cross over and go for jobs in the school mental health clinician. That would be fine, but at the same time, we're creating gaps in services. So the Dr. Tomberlin recommended, rather than the 56,000 quoted salary quoted in policy, he recommended a 33,000 to a 59,000 range. And we feel like that range will will expand the opportunities of every school system, regardless of wealth, to employ that position, that very necessary position. So that is categorized as discussion. It will come back to us next month for action. Yes, and P3 pertains to school administrators, and we know that a law was passed. This is Session Law 2021-170, pertaining to GS, General Statute 111C 284, which sets out all the licensure standards for school principals, school administrators. We did receive a waiver in those requirements, and the waiver is good until August 31, 2022. Dr. Tomberlin had given us some homework assignment. He presented 4 or 5 questions to us yesterday. Those questions generated very good discussion. Probably we may need, if we have the time, to discuss a little bit further. It just depends on Dr. Tomberlin getting back with his advisory committees and moving this item towards some form of recommendation to bring back to us sooner versus later, because I'll reiterate, August 31, 2022 is when these waivers expire. The questions pertain to the 10-month internship, which is already in policy. 10-month does that mean 10-month on a continuous run from August to May? Or does that mean 10 months divided up between part of a year and part of a following year? It wouldn't be a bad idea for us to continue thinking about that. The internship, to me, is kind of the pinnacle of an MSA program. It is, whether it's the MSA full program or the add-on principal certificate program, those candidates still have to do an internship. What else is needed around the internship? We might want to think about, do we want to add a shadowing requirement to that? Another question pertains to the minimum 4-year requirement. In other words, in order for a principal to be licensed, there is already in general statute a 4-year minimum classroom teaching requirement. The other question that I posed, all of these questions are very, very important to me. Why? Because I live MSA daily, and I've thought about these questions long and hard. So this item is very important to me. You can hear it in my voice. So the other question that I think the board needs to deal with is, must a principal hold a teaching certificate, whether it be a North Carolina teaching certificate or one that we accept from another state? That's an important question. And another question had to do with in addition to the MSA pathway, which is a full degree pathway, should the board continue with the kind of an add-on certificate? And that means that a candidate will come to an EPP with a master's degree and take an additional 21 or 24 hours, and through those additional hours around school administration, that person can receive a principal certificate without the full MSA degree. So those were the questions that Dr. Tomberlin highlighted, and we had a very good discussion around those questions. think those are all the items that we covered. I do want to be transparent with my board members and with the public and all of you in the room. I'm going to tell you, if Pepsi is such an important partner, they give us good ideas, great recommendations. We act on those recommendations. They always become policy. But I'm going to say to you folks, if the recommendation that comes to us from Pepsi is not for school administrators, is not as rigorous as the licensure standards for teachers and school counselors and all others in that school building that are led and supervised and assisted and monitored and supported by the leader of that school, if the recommendation isn't as rigorous as it is for the classroom teacher and all the others I have just listed, I will have a very hard time supporting that recommendation. Why? Because I lived this. I've thought about it for 15 years, these questions. I talk about it with my colleagues at UNC Pembroke. I serve on the North Carolina Principal Fellows Commission. We've raised these issues in our committee meetings. So I'm going to, in the spirit and honesty of transparency, again, I know I'm taking up time, but I just need to say it. If the recommendations that come our way next month or the following month or on into the early spring are not as rigorous as those licensure standards for teachers, it will be difficult for Olivia Oxendine, who chairs this committee, to support that recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Oxendine. I now recognize Ms. Jill Kamnitz, Chair of the Student Learning and Achievement Committee. Ms. Kamnitz.
Thank you, Chair Davis, and I share the responsibilities for this committee with Dr. Oxendine. We had 2 items of new business yesterday. The first is the North Carolina Standard Course of Study Internal Procedures Manual. The department engages in periodic review and revision of each set of subject area standards that make up the standard course of study and brings those proposed revisions to the State Board for approval. The purpose of this procedures manual is to outline that process across all subject areas, clarifying the topics, categories, and minimum supporting materials necessary, and the considerations that must be made as standards are reviewed, revised, and implemented. There have been several attempts at creating such a manual, but none came forward for board approval in the past. Last fall, the superintendent proposed and the board concurred that the agency would develop the guide and bring it to us for final approval. This was our first review of the draft. We will walk through the table of contents, including examples of the templates that will be used during various parts of the process. The draft manual will be refined based on our feedback and feedback from other stakeholders, and work will also begin on an external implementation guide. The internal procedures manual will be a discussion item at our January meeting. We then had an update on early literacy letters training. The 32 districts of Cohort 1 are now several months into their training, and Cohort 2 begins in January, so there was much to share. It is clear that the trail blazed by Cohort 1 will make for a smoother path for 2 and 3. A strong partnership has been formed between DPI and the letters team as they address district concerns, needs, and problems, given the challenges of Cohort 1's delayed start and the difficulty in scheduling PD professional development, as a result of the substitute teacher shortage. Despite those problems, over 10,000 educators in North Carolina have attended their first letters sessions, which is truly something to celebrate, as is the simultaneous letters training occurring among UNC educational prep program faculty. 34 more districts will begin the journey in January. Ms. Ryan shared some extremely positive feedback from Cohort 1 administrators, which was great to hear. We also heard from leaders of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, which is part of Cohort 1. They reviewed their challenges, solutions, timeline, lessons learned, and next steps, which deepened our understanding of the district experience in this critically important change process. Action on first read today is SLA 1, a report to the JLEOC, broaden access and successful participation in advanced coursework. This is an annual report that charts our progress towards increasing the number of students enrolled in advanced courses and the support being offered to ensure student success, particularly in low-performing districts. These efforts are directly aligned with several elements of our strategic plan. Our partnership with the College Board around AP courses is an important part of this work, as is the provision of funding for exam fees and professional development. While the actual data showed a small decline in exam takers and scores in 2020-21, ours were actually less than those seen nationally. Ms. Shaw-Coltrane and Ms. Cross also reviewed next steps and promising practices in several districts. Finally, we had 2 discussion items, SLA 2, Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration Research and Evaluation Priorities. This draft research and evaluation plan was reviewed at length as new business in November. It is part of the work being done by the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration, as it assures that our students recover from the challenges of the last 2 years and accelerate their learning. The board gave thoughtful consideration to several questions posed by Dr. Korn and offered feedback as the Office of Learning Recovery finalizes their plan. The ultimate goal, or one of the ultimate goals, is to evaluate the impact of interventions already in progress across the state and to use all available research partners to identify programs with demonstrated impact, using them to build a clearinghouse of promising practice that will be available to districts across the state. SLA 3 is a report to the JLEOC, Extension, Learning, Recovery, and Enrichment Programs. State Law 2021-7 required that each of our LEAs develop a school extension, learning, recovery, and enrichment program funded through ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. This required report on those programs includes the result of competency-based assessments in grades K-8 at both the beginning and end of each program, the number of students who progressed to the next grade level after participating, the number who were retained after participating, the number of students who received high school credit recovery, results of end-of-program surveys, site locations, and enrollment data. The report includes each LEA's plan and available data. And finally, we have 2 consent items, SLA 4, both of which are self-explanatory through their title, I believe. SLA 4 is a report to the North Carolina General Assembly, statewide administration of the testing program. We saw this last month. It includes data on locally administered standardized testing. And then finally, SLA 5 was a report to the General Assembly, education of children in private psychiatric residential treatment facilities. And that concludes the committee report.
Thank you, Ms. Kamnitz. I now turn to Ms. Amy White, Chair of the Education, Innovation, and Charter Schools Committee. Ms. White.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Jill Kamnitz and I share the responsibility of leading the Education, Innovation, and Charter School Committee. My colleagues will point the finger at me. It was totally my fault that they did not leave the building until well after the dinner hour yesterday evening. However, it was worth it because we started our day yesterday with an amazing new business item, a presentation by a group of folks from Sally B. Howard. It's a charter school in Wilson, North Carolina. Dr. Woodard and Mr. Sandeep Agarwal from Sally B. Howard and their amazing team shared with us their outstanding commitment to closing the achievement gap for students in a county that has many, many families who are economically and educationally disadvantaged. We heard themes of consistency and instructional leadership, teachers on staff there that have been there for 15, 16, 20 years, undergirding their curriculum and instruction with both love and kindness. Their core belief was that children can achieve greatness regardless of their circumstances. They believe in the theory of multiple intelligences, that all students are gifted by God with an intelligence and that they can be an expert in their field. They believe strongly in the partnership for home, school, and community, and that everybody that is a part of that campus as an instructional leader works together like family. It is no secret that the magic that happens on that campus comes from the people who work there each and every day. So that was an amazing presentation. We closed out new business and moved to our requested update on the charter school renewal process. Board members and advisors were provided at our desks with an incredible manual that included not only a reference tool for us as we consider schools that will be renewed in early 2020 or recommended for renewal in 2022, but it also highlighted the information that reflects both statute, policy, and procedure as schools walk through a 2-year arduous process to get the renewal that they need to continue on as a charter school in North Carolina. For action yesterday, we talked through the North Carolina Access Program, and Mr. Jay Whalen presented to us 2 schools that will take up the remainder of funding available through the NC Access Grant. We will not have another cycle of funds available this spring, so these are the last 2 that will receive funding, and they were Central Carolina Academy and West Triangle High, and so that action will be that we approve that funding to go to those 2 schools to provide a number of different resources, providing additional opportunities for educationally disadvantaged students attending charter schools in the state of North Carolina. We had multiple items for discussion. The first was EICS 2, and that was the recommendations for acceleration for our charter schools. This is the charter school process, applying for a new charter, and it's very, very quick. And so instead of an extended period that our normal charter schools apply, they apply quickly, and these schools would be recommended for opening in the fall of 2022. So if approved for us by us next month, these 3 schools have been recommended for approval. First is Movement School Southwest. That school is located in Mecklenburg County. The second is Oak Hill Charter, and that is in Caldwell County. And then Revitalized Charter in Wake County. Those are the 3 schools that are recommended for acceleration. Again, they would open in the fall of 2022. Elaine Riddick also is a school that went through the acceleration process, but it was not recommended to us through CSAB, and I am not recommending that they move forward. The recommendation for next month will be for Revitalized Charter, Oak Hill Charter, and Movement School Southwest to receive an accelerated application. EICS 3 was Phoenix Academy's request to partner with a new management organization. The founders of Phoenix Academy are retiring, and so in that retirement, they were looking to partner with a new EMO, and the new EMO that they selected is NHA. NHA has an outstanding track record of management, not only in North Carolina, but in multiple states in the United States, and so the CSAB is bringing that forward to us as a request that we approve that new management organization for Phoenix Academy. EICS 4 is Aspire Trade School. This is a school that was formerly Huntersville Charter Academy, located just north of Charlotte, and they have a very innovative program that is going to be a trade high school. But due to the incredible increase in construction and supplies, they are before us with a 2nd-year delay, and the request is that we approve that 2nd-year delay. And then EICS 5 was our report to the JLEOC, the Joint Legislative Education Oversight Committee. Isn't that a mouthful? On the ISD, and I just have to give kudos to the amazing first of all, the fact that the ISD team from Southside Ashbrook joined us. Principal Isabel Jones, newly appointed and started the year with feet on the ground and guns a-blazing this fall. Superintendent of Robeson County Schools, Freddie Williamson, made the trip to come and show his support as we begin the process of transitioning that ISD school back to the public schools of Robeson County. Ron Hargrave is the superintendent of the ISD. I have to mention Deshauna Gooch because she has been on board since the ISD was created and this school was selected. And just thankful for that team and the report that they gave on the good work that's being done at Southside Ashpole. And then, Mr. Chair, we did have 4 consent items for your approval, or for our approval, today, and that is, let me get back to those. That's what happens when you don't have your paperwork in front of you. Jill Camnitz to the rescue. EICS 6, see, teamwork, where's Freebird? It happens at the board table too. EICS 6, the 2021 North Carolina Virtual Annual Report. EICS 7, the North Carolina Virtual Public School Advisory Council recommendations, and I reminded you to take a look at that because we have some student recommendations for the first time ever. EICS 8 is Carolina Charter Schools' request to implement a weighted lottery. And finally, Mr. Chair, EICS 9, the Learning School Center's request to also implement a weighted lottery. That concludes our report for the day.
Thank you, Ms. White. And now turn to Mr. Reginald Keenan, Chair of the Healthy Responsible Students Committee. Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Reginald Keenan, along with Alan Duncan. We are, of course, working together on the HRS committee. Mr. Chair, as you know, we had one action on first read. We also have a discussion item, we have a consent item. On the action first read, this report to North Carolina General Assembly to, as far as the pilot program to raise the high school dropout age from 16 to 18, and Dr. Taylor gave us a really good brief presentation on that. And in a nutshell, he recommends that we continue to pursue that effort, get more units involved as far as pilot programs. And the main thing that came out of that particular discussion, and why it's a good thing, is that we're able to, those who may want to drop out, by then 2 more years, we're able to work with them and maybe through some method, wrap around service to help encourage that particular student to go ahead and get that high school diploma. So I think it's a great thing, and Dr. Taylor did emphasize that as that extra time can make a difference in those children's lives. And that's basically summarized that particular presentation. As far as the discussion item, we have the Healthy Active Children Policy Report. Dr. Essex came and gave a great presentation along with the update on the whole child update. And of course, on the Healthy Active Children Policy Report, we all read that, and it's very explicit, very detailed. It covers the many things that we're doing with Dr. Essex and others to make our children more healthy, because as we know, healthy children learn better. And that policy definitely covers the different areas that is necessary for us to continue to work and do what it takes to make sure our children get the best. And on the whole child update was very good information again that sort of again talks about the things that they are doing, and also that we no doubt need more funding, and she's pursuing more funding because there's a lot of children out there need help, and as you know, a lot of times you can't get it without the funding, and there's so many needs. And again, I commend Dr. Essex and her committee for the things they are doing to try to make a difference. And again, I always tell her that she definitely in her committee has our support, because we need that more than ever now for our children. And with that, and the last one, consent item, is whereby we are reporting to the General Assembly the school-based mental health policy. And again, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. I now turn to Vice Chair Duncan, Chair of the Business Operations Committee, for the final committee report of the day.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Along with Todd Chastain, we lead the Business Operations Committee. We have 5 items on action of first read. The first one was Biz Op 1, and you will recall there was a discussion by Dr. Matt Hoskins to review a proposed contract relating to EC services that was in fact required as part of federal funding. We also had Michael Ramsey reported on a contract with respect to the starting of use of cybersecurity funding that we were recently granted in the legislature that will set out the planning and the path for how cybersecurity work is going to be done on behalf of the state and through the districts. So those were 2 contracts we have for approval that are over $500,000. Biz Op 2 was the state board policy amendment for modifications and additional items related to the session law for the allotment policy manual. This relates to the recent passage of the budget again, and necessary adjustments that need to be made to the policy manual. These are not all the adjustments made. I think Ms. Schaus again made that clear today. There are additional adjustments that are going to come back to us as we continue to proceed through the budget changes, but these are ones that were ready to be put in, and so time is of the essence here. There's a lot of work to be done to make this budget work as we go forward in terms of making sure we follow what the General Assembly has asked us to do. BizOp 3, again, is related to the recent legislation passed through the budget, and this is State Board Policy Amendment modifications to the North Carolina Public Schools Salary Manual. So again, Ms. Schaus reviewed those with us. Those modifications, again, may not be the only ones. We may have some additional adjustments to the salary manual as well, but these are ones that will start that process. BizOp 4 is the 21st Century Community Learning Center's Summer 2022 mini grants. We had Dr. Tricia Townsend report to us on the process that's being followed, and we had a very helpful discussion during that about ways we can continue to assure equity in the distribution of these grant monies, not just with the mini grants, but with respect to the annual grants during the school year for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. So the discussion was helpful, and I think will help guide the presentation we see in the next month or two with respect to the 21st Century grant for the next school year. And do appreciate the work that's being done both by the board and by the staff in terms of making sure that we have opportunities all around the state for worthy and needed areas of support for our children. BizOp 5 is emergency assistance for non-public schools, allocation for distribution to non-public schools. This is an item that stems out of the ESSER 3 funds, if you will, or ARP. It went through GEAR. So the governors governors were allotted a certain amount of funds. In North Carolina, the governor chose to accept those funds. A portion of the funds, a significant portion of the funds, is being allocated for COVID relief for those students who attend non-public schools. Non-public schools having also been affected, as all school children have been affected by the COVID pandemic. So the governor has elected, governor in making this forwarding has elected to use a formulation for allocation that we would then adopt, which is one comment to us, 50% based on ADM and 50% based on poverty. And so it's our job then, as we had before, is to approve the allocations to, I believe it was 79 schools of approximately $82 million in EAMS funding. So that's our fifth item for consent, for action on first reading. We had two consent items. One was BizOp 6, which is a school calendar waiver report. BizOp 7 was a certification of finance officers. Again, that's a matter we see frequently and routinely in terms of making these certifications upon recommendation of our financial leaders in our DPI staff. We had updated contracts report available to everyone to review, both on executed contracts and on planned contracts. We have some monthly requested updates. One of them is our monthly budget report. I think we decided to forego any discussion yesterday of that, knowing we were going to have a substantial discussion today on the new budget that has come through. We did have the agency vacancy reports, and Ron Paxton was here to answer any questions that anyone had. Those reports continue to develop in a way that suggests that we are making good progress. We still have work to do, and Mr. Paxton's going to give us a report in January in terms of where we went in the last year, how much progress we made. We did a lot of, I think we made a lot of progress, but we are also adding some positions, as you saw. So we have a continued amount of work to do, and I think he's doing a good job of keeping us advised on key statistical information, and we'll continue to do that. Finally, Alexis Schaus reported on, as she does on a regular basis, with respect to the status of the expenditure of the PSU COVID, ESSER, and GEAR funds. We all know there's several federal funding sources. It's our job to assist in the oversight of all of those sources, and in some cases the allocation, obviously, of those resources. And so these reports are important so we can see where the various sources of funding, of which we now know there are many federal sources of funding, where those sources of funding, each of them are in terms of what's been spent, generally follow how it's being spent, and also keep close tabs on what remains, and what the plans are for spending the remainder of those funds. We want to use in a productive way for every child in this state, every dollar that we've got that's been made available to us, because we are here to help our children through this very, very difficult time. So these reports are very helpful, I think, to everyone on the board, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, so that we stay carefully attuned to what's going on with respect to those expenditures. With that, Mr. Chair, I believe we're finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. We'll now take a brief break before we move to the chairman's report and action items. So we'll reconvene at 12:55. Excuse me, 11:55.
We can all breathe again.
Okay.
Fairness and consideration, and I'll turn to Mr. Brandon Walker to present this item. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair Davis. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate you guys saving the most exciting and thrilling topic for the end here. I'll be as brief as possible, but the decennial rule review update. Back in September, if everybody remembers, the board approved about 18 rules that DPI has determined to be unnecessary. And from there, we went into a 60-day public comment period, which expired on November 15th. We did not receive any comments. In our conversations, Tom Zyko and myself had a conversation with our friends over at OAH, and they raised a potential concern. And that concern is, in our posting, we posted our unnecessary rules. And what they would prefer to see was all the rules that we're dealing with, both necessary and unnecessary. So we reviewed our calendar and our timetable, and to avoid any potential challenge down the road, which could come up, we're not seeing that, but we decided to extend the public comment period another 60 days. And that would put us to January 14th. So the nice thing about this, and if you remember from my presentation last time, it's this calendar that was approved by the board that we set in partnership with OAH that is really the driving force behind this, and we really need to stick to that as much as possible. With this extension, it's not going to affect the ultimate timetable there, so we're still going to meet the calendar that we agreed upon, which is going to be a February submission from the state board for approval by the Rules Review Commission on March 15th. With that, within our slides, there's also a number. If we're reiterating the unnecessary rules that we're talking about today, nothing's changed in terms of that. The only real update is the extension of the 60-day public comment period. Again, we have not received any public comments and don't anticipate receiving any. If we do, the only hiccup, and it's not much of a hiccup, would be we'd have a shortened response time to stick with our calendar in terms of turnaround for DPI and our staff to respond to that public comment. But again, we haven't received any today. So we're asking the board today to approve the extension of the 60-day public comment period to January 14th. And with that, I'd open it up to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Any questions from Mr. Walker on this request for our consideration? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
This will move to our action item agenda in just a moment. We do have one additional item to consider and have a few opening comments on this item. First, I'd remind us all that the State Board of Education was created by the North Carolina Constitution and given the authority to supervise and administer the free public school system across our state. As part of its constitutional duty, this state board is charged with ensuring that public school students in North Carolina are provided the opportunity to receive a sound basic education. Moreover, we've demonstrated through our strategic plan and other commitments that we are determined to raise the academic achievement of every student in North Carolina. To fulfill that duty, the state board, through the Department of Public Instruction, has provided assistance teams to 6 low-performing districts in the state for the purpose of supporting and improving the instruction in those districts. A low-performing district is one in which over half the schools in the district are low-performing. One of the low-performing school districts that's been assigned a DPI assistance team is the Northampton County School District. Our preferred approach is one of collaboration and partnership through the assistance team with local boards of education and local superintendents. The state board also has specific authority under state statutes to provide additional support through more direct intervention in the operation of low-performing districts if the board deems it necessary to improve the instruction in those districts and the students' academic achievement. The state board has received evidence that more assertive steps are warranted to address the instructional needs and to elevate the academic achievement of the Northampton County Public Schools students. The board will consider today the steps outlined in the following motion. Ms. Kamnitz.
Thank you, Chair Davis. I make the following motion. That we approve the appointment of Dr. Dell Burns as interim superintendent for the Northampton County Schools pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes Sections 115C-105.39 and 115C-274B and C. That we approve the proposed interim superintendent contract with Dr. Burns for a period of 1 year. We assign all the duties of superintendent of the Northampton County Schools to Dr. Burns, effective immediately. That we authorize Dr. Burns to assume any or all of the duties of the finance officer of the Northampton County Schools as he sees fit in his discretion. We authorize the use of DPI lapsed salary funds to cover the costs associated with the part-time temporary salary and travel costs for Dr. Burns during the period in which the Northampton County Schools would otherwise incur overlapping costs for both the current and interim superintendent. And that we suspend Dr. Pamela Chambly with pay from her position as superintendent of the Northampton County Schools, effective immediately, with a requirement that she follow the instructions contained in the suspension letter to be delivered to her today.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Kamnitz, second by Vice Chair Duncan. This item was discussed at length in closed session. Are there any questions? Hearing none, this item will move to our action agenda to be considered next. Board members will now vote on any item requiring action from your committee reports. A thorough discussion and report was provided on each respective committee item. Also, the consent agenda, a reminder, is primarily not complex and may have come to the board for discussion in a prior month. I note also that board members have seen these consent agenda items for at least a week. This time I ask if there's a request to remove any item from consent, action on first reading agendas. Hearing none, I request a motion to approve the following items: the November 2nd through 4th, 2021 meeting minutes, the November 8th, 2021 Executive Committee meeting minutes, SLA 1 and 4 through 5, EICS 1 and 6 through 9, HRS 1 and 3, BizOp 1 through 7, ES&P 1, the IPL and ILT licensure approval recommendations is presented in closed session, the residential schools hire recommendations, the appointment of an interim superintendent, Dr. Dale Burns, to Northampton County Schools as presented by Ms. Kamnitz, and the extension of the comment period for the rules deemed unnecessary as presented by Mr. Walker. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Keenan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Kamnitz. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, Dr. Townsend Smith, will you call the roll to capture the vote?
Yes, sir. Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell? Treasurer Falwell? Lieutenant Governor?
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell? Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes. Motion carries. This concludes our action agenda for today and our work in this meeting. I want to thank all of you who participated in preparing for and participated during this meeting. I want to wish each of you a safe, restful, and enjoyable holiday season. And while we are enjoying celebrating the holidays with those we most love, let us also be mindful that their health is also in our hands. Let's do all we can to take care of ourselves and each other and have a safe and restful holiday. I now ask for a motion to adjourn this December 2nd, 2021 meeting.
Treasurer Falwell makes that motion and votes aye on the previous motion.
Thank you, Treasurer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. White. Dr. Townsend Smith.
Yes, sir. Dr. Oxendine?
Yes.
Ms. Camnitz?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Dr. Tipton Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Treasurer Falwell?
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor?
Yes.
Vice Chair Duncan?
Yes.
Chair Davis?
Yes. We stand adjourned. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Holiday.